The idea really was to drive the Jimny out. So I said, okay, where can I go? Roughly around 200 kilometers. We've got 190 kilometers to go. When you drive somewhere, you feel that you've gradually arrived, eased into that destination. When you fly in somewhere, you just feel like you've been plucked from your city and been transported there. I was just wondering what's happening because as I'm leaning on the car, I can feel it move. So if you're the sort who wants to overtake everything that you find on the road, this is not a car for you. You know you're in Tamil Nadu by tasting the sambar. Hi folks, we've just stepped out on our first long drive in the Jimny and I'm on my way to Yercaud. We're going to be filming there for a couple of days, so do look out for a few episodes on Yercaud in Gourmet on the road. But this vlog is about driving the Jimny for 200 kilometers and seeing how it does. So this is going to be interesting because it's got the flat highways and there's also a fair bit of ghats that I will encounter as I climb up from Salem to Yercaud. It's about 10 o'clock in the morning. We've spent the last 1.5 hours fighting traffic getting out of Bengaluru. Got a bit of a traffic snarl in Electronic City on the flyover, but all that's behind us now and we are making our way to Atibele, to the toll. So hopefully this should be an interesting watch. I've had the Jimny now for nearly a month and I also have to turn it in for servicing, and the first servicing is 1,000 kilometers or a month, and at this point I've barely done about 350-370 kilometers in the car. So I thought I should definitely log some kilometers before I turn the car in for the first service. So this is my third vlog in the Jimny. The first one of course was when we got it, and then I did a second vlog too, which was the reason why I picked the Jimny, because I got quite a few comments asking why I picked the Jimny over some of the other cars that's available in the market, more specifically the Thar. So I made a detailed, I think 18-20 minute video on it. If you haven't caught it yet, I'm going to place a link in the description below, and that should put to rest any queries that you may have as to why I picked the Jimny. So anyways, for this vlog we're going to drive towards Yercaud and hopefully enjoy the drive. As I was fighting the traffic on my way out of Bengaluru, the one thing I have realized is that on a motorcycle you don't feel the weight of the traffic so much if you've stepped out late. But in the car you certainly do, because there's very little space for you to maneuver as opposed to a motorcycle. So that's the one thing that I should definitely keep in mind when I do these explorations in the Jimny. We've just crossed Atibele toll. I think from this point on we should make good work. Bit of an off-roading stretch there. Actually just a little bump on the road as we transition from the service road to the highway after the diversion. I haven't been able to do any off-roading in the Jimny yet. So right now we're taking this route via Salem, so which is pretty straightforward and the roads are very good. But there's also another route which is after Dharmapuri. You take a left and that goes via the ghats, but a different ghat, and there I'm told the drive is a little adventurous. So perhaps on the way back we'll take that, and if it's interesting enough you'll see that in another vlog. But for now this is going to be the route that we take. Shows arrival at 1:20 PM. We've got 190 kilometers to go. I've just been getting a feel of highway driving, and I must say the one thing is that it feels rock steady. I was wondering whether on the highways I'd be bouncing around, but not at all. In fact, I've been doing about 80, 90 and the car feels very, very planted. So even when you go over those undulations on the road, when you go over those bumps, it feels very solid. I think we are now driving through the Samanwai forest range. Plenty of traffic though today. Today is a Thursday, so I guess a lot more trucks on the road. In terms of fuel economy, currently it shows about 10.7 kilometers to a litre. I suspect by the time we reach Salem, that would have only gotten better. So when the guys at the showroom told me that you'll get around 15, I found that a little hard to believe, especially for an automatic. But I think that's probably possible. Of course, depends totally on your style of driving. If you drive flat-footed, pressing the accelerator all the way down, you may not get that, but otherwise you will. The one thing you got to remember is that this is a 4-speed automatic gearbox, so it's not a 5-speed or a 6-speed. So the overdrive kicks in much earlier, much lower in the engine rev band. So therefore, it won't be as, let's say, economical in terms of its fuel efficiency, let's say like the Grand Vitara, because that's the same engine. But this engine has been tuned to deliver more torque, especially at the lower end of the engine's rev, because that's what you need when you're off-roading. You want to get that torque at low speeds, and therefore it's been optimized, it's been tuned to that. Of course, it beeps every once in a while to remind me that I'm crossing 80. But I'm told this is what all cars now have. I didn't realize that on the Crista, because the Crista is 5 years old now. So that time they didn't have this mandate in place. But now every new car has that. So it beeps softly at 80 once you cross 80, each time you cross 80. And then I'm told at 120, it's a constant beep, reminding you to slow down. కొంచెం strong ఇరుకల. Usually when I call for my coffee, it's always slightly strong, less sugar, but today I forgot to mention it. But nonetheless, the coffee isn't sweet and certainly is strong in its character too. Vadai sambar, single vadai. Once we get to yercaud, we'll get into the gourmet on the road sort of mode, but right now it's more about just having some fun driving the Jimny and trying to capture a bit of it for the purpose of this vlog. So of course we are in Shoolagiri in Tamil Nadu, so the sambar is nice and thick, and the thing to do here is to savor it with some of that onions, with some of the chinna vengayam specifically. These are the large onions. You know you're in Tamil Nadu by tasting the sambar. You can taste the weight of the lentils, the burden of the lentils on your tongue. There's also a bit of spice, a bit of the sourness, but no sweet whatsoever, because there's no jaggery that goes into the sambar here. Biting into a bit of the pepper in that vadai. Well, these are the tiny shallots that make a big difference when you're tasting the vadai sambar. Definitely a lot more savory in their character, and also that slight tinge of sweetness in the onions. So when you're in Tamil Nadu and if somebody offers you the onions, the vengayam with the sambar, always ask them for the chinna, the small vengayam. I was planning on having my first meal only around lunch, but I saw a plate of this vadai finding its way to the next table, and I had to order one. I'm crunching into a fair bit of pepper, whole pepper in that vadai. I was planning on doing a stop in Salem for lunch, but I think we'll directly drive to Yercaud. Look at these mountains, the Shoolagiri Mountains. There was a time when I used to drive like that, just vroom past the highway. But that's not my driving style anymore. And I guess that's the reason why I find that this car suits my driving personality. So one of the concerns about this car, and something that even I had, was its power, because it's only 1500cc, but the power is adequate. For example, right now I'm about 100 and the car feels very smooth. I'm at roughly 2800 rpm when it comes to the engine rev, and I feel like it can go a lot more. I'm not going to redline it today because we've still not gone for our first service, but I'm sure this is a car that can easily touch about 130, 140. Of course, you'll need to work the engine a bit, but I suspect the sweet spot for this car is somewhere in the 110, 120 region. So if you're the sort who wants to overtake everything that you find on the road, this is not a car for you. But if you're the sort who wants to have quick pace but also drive easy and relaxed, well, then this is a car that you'll enjoy. I'm going over some rumble strips, but it feels so sorted, the vehicle. So now as we were coming up on this slope, and suddenly the truck in front of me slowed down, so I slowed down too. And then when you give it that gas, you can see that engine rev up directly from about 2000 to roughly around 3000 rpm. So it's quite responsive too. So when you need that power, it will deliver you that power in that short burst, but it doesn't have very long legs. It will take its time getting to the higher end of the speed or the rev range. But when you want that power initially in the low RPM, you'll get that torque, you'll get that pickup. You can feel the heat of Tamil Nadu, especially when we stop for breakfast. I had a bit of an allergy in the morning, but tasting that vada with all that pepper and then the Tamil Nadu heat, well, that allergy seems to be slowly but surely dissipating away. Of course, Yercaud is going to be colder. The idea really was to drive the Jimny out. So I said, okay, where can I go? Roughly around 200 kilometers. Yercaud came to mind, and there were one or two stories that I've been wanting to do in Yercaud for a while. And so therefore we decided to, like the old adage goes, the old phrase goes, kill two birds with one stone. So the drive quality of the Jimny, even before I picked up the vehicle, whatever I'd seen in terms of the reviews internationally, people love the drive quality of the car. I'm sure on off-road it's going to perform beautifully well. Perhaps after the first service, we'll try and figure out a trail where we can also do some off-roading. Just drove past my favorite Sarvana Bhavan here in Krishnagiri. No stops there for lunch this time, but I definitely want to return there someday for lunch. I've done breakfast there and it's always so good. Lovely verdant fields, the lake. There's something about driving to a destination, that experience that you just don't get when you fly in somewhere. But when you make this journey, when you drive somewhere, you feel that you've gradually arrived, eased into that destination, eased into the flow of things at the place. When you fly in somewhere, you just feel like you've been plucked from your city and been transported there. But when you drive somewhere and you've spent a few hours on the road taking in the vistas, taking a look at what's happening around you, the people, the scenery, the weather, you feel like you've arrived, like you've gradually arrived. I don't know if it makes sense. Varun, who's filming this, just told me, I think he paid the nicest compliment one could. He said this doesn't feel like a Maruti, and that's true, it doesn't feel like one, in the manner that the door thuds to just the drive quality. In the city, when you push the vehicle too hard, you can certainly feel that engine whine a bit if you want to push it beyond 80, 90. But that's because you're doing it over short bursts. But on the highway, when you're cruising at 100 at those low RPMs, you can barely hear the engine. So now for instance, you could hear the engine a bit because I was going up a slope. But now we are coasting at 100 and it's a very silent cabin. We're approaching Kaveri Pattinam in about 3 kilometers and we have 103 kilometers to our destination. I think as far as highway driving goes, I've got a very good sense of this car. What I'm looking forward to next is how it will perform on the twisties in the ghats. The one thing that I have at the back of my mind is that the turning radius of the Jimny is a little wider than even that of the Krista. I've not been on the Salem ghats in a very long time. So I don't know if some of them may be too tight. Perhaps the main Salem yercaud ghat may be okay, but I think on the way back it may be a bit tight. So I was standing against the car trying to get some thumbnails for this vlog. And as I was feeling the car, I can feel the car move with every passing vehicle. You know, this is a vehicle that's light. For a minute that startled me. I was just wondering what's happening. So when you're in the car, it feels quite solid. But when you're outside there, leaning against the car, you can actually feel the car move with every truck or bus that passes by. So when it comes to overtaking, you need to put some thought into it. You need to kind of keep in mind that your power is more in the low RPMs and going up to the mid-range. If you're in your mid-range, you can easily go past most things that you will find on the road. So for instance, right now I'm at 50. The moment I gun the engine, I get that immediate surge of power. I'm at 60 now, it's about 2000 RPM. Going into 80 at about 2200, 2500 RPM. 100 at about 3000 RPM. And now as you keep your pressure on the accelerator, you can definitely feel the engine working hard. So I think overtakes in the low and mid end are fairly smooth, fairly quick. But when it comes to overtaking, let's say post 100, you need to probably plan your moves a bit in advance. Sweet irukku.
Sweet இனிப்பு.
இனிப்பு இருக்கு. yercaud road நல்லா இருக்கா?
State bypass ஒரு 30 kilometer.
30 kilometer. பேரு
சுமதி.
சுமதி. ஊரு இதா? சேலம். வாம்லூர்.
சேலம் முன்னாடி 8 kilometer.
I needed the sweetness of the tender coconut to wake me up. Towards the end, I was feeling a bit drowsy. Wanted to get a little perked up before we hit the ghats. And we found Sumati's coconut stall here in Vamlur. So the weather here at Vamlur is quite similar to what one finds in Bengaluru. I'm told in the morning and evening it's pleasant, but afternoons are quite hot, and that's where that Tenga Tanni, the coconut water, provided some cooling respite. So we're going to take the bypass past Salem and find our way to yercaud. I learned from Sumati, our friendly coconut vendor, that there are about 19 or 20 hairpin bends to contend with before we reach Yercaud, and that's what I'm looking forward to next. I think the highways have been nice, smooth, but it's the ghats that where I want to test what this Jimny is all about. Well, Yercaud is 17 kilometers away, and I'm told there are about 18 or 19 or 20 hairpin bends before I get there. And that's really what I'm looking forward to on this drive. When it came to the highways, the Jimny performed brilliantly well. But what needs to be seen is how the Jimny performs on the hairpin bends. Does it have enough power to take on the ghats? Is the turning circle, is the steering radius going to be too wide? Is it going to run out of breath? Well, that's what I'm eager to find out.